When it comes down to texturing our 3D models, usually people go with JPEG and PNG. And while this topic might seem vague, recently I have been working on customizing my MetaHumans and I was texturing them in Substance Painter and Blender. And I realized that this topic is a lot more deeper than you realize. JPEG and PNG formats are vastly different, and you have to know what to use and where to use if you really want to get the best result out of your project. And so in this video, I'm going to give you the basic differences between JPEG and PNG, because believe it or not, people usually say that JPEG is better because it's smaller and there is not a loss of quality. But that's not true at all. There is a big difference between JPEG and PNG, and that is what I'm going to discuss within this video. So without any further ado, let's begin. So I'm going to talk about different maps such as base color, normal, roughness and metallic. And one of the things that we have noticed is that when I was texturing my models, in case of base color, you can actually go with JPEG and get pretty much the same quality as PNG. Now keep in mind that when you texture bake in Blender or Substance Painter, while you are saving the image, there are settings that can change the compression of that image. And so when you are using JPEG for base color, you have to keep in mind that you do not compress the image any further. The JPEG file format already compresses the image and texture quality, and so you don't have to compress it even further. So when you see the option of compression or if you see the option of quality, put it to 100%. Remember that JPEG is still going to be less than half of what PNG is, so you don't really need to compress it any further. With that said, I think for base color, in 90% of the time, you can go with JPEG format as well. The thing is that JPEG saves a lot of memory, as I said, which will make your textures overall lighter, but not only that, the actual base color doesn't lose a lot of information. Now I will have to say that as if you are texturing, let's say, high quality models, you should always keep a backup of the texture when you are making it, and so keeping the backup in PNG is better because PNG doesn't lose any data. But in case of JPEG, you will lose data. So just keep a backup with PNG, but for the main texture, you can definitely go with JPEG. After base color, we are going to talk about metallic map. And this is where things do not get much interesting either, because in case of metallic map, you can also save this one as just the JPEG format. Now, I don't know why a lot of people are not talking about this, but in case of metallic map, if you are using the metallic map, you know that it's going to be black and white. And so in case of that, you usually will not see a lot of difference between PNG and JPEG. With that said, there is a very slight difference between both the metallic maps of JPEG and PNG. I have actually tested this both because I was actually making armor pieces for my MetaHuman character for Unreal Engine, and in case of JPEG and PNG, the metallic map did not lose a lot of quality. With that said, as I said in previous one, you should always keep a backup with the PNG. Because if you don't and you only bake the texture in JPEG and then you delete the original texture, you will now have a downgraded version. And while JPEG doesn't lose quality initially, if you bake the same JPEG map twice or thrice, you will definitely see a big change in the actual quality. So with that said, in case of metallic map, you can definitely go with JPEG. In fact, I will recommend you to go with JPEG most of the time. But if you see some significant change, then you can go for PNG as well. But in case of metallic map as well, usually going with JPEG is gonna be absolutely fine. Now roughness map is where things get interesting. For some reason, when you bake roughness map in JPEG, the actual roughness becomes actually a little more shiny and a little less rough. So basically, if you are making a very specific level of roughness for any surface, you should always, and I'm saying this, you should always bake the roughness map in PNG. I don't know why this is not talked about enough in the 3D space, but the truth is that in case of roughness map, I have seen drastic differences between JPEG and PNG. So for whatever reason, and I don't exactly know why, I do not know, I cannot point out the finger of why this happens, but in case of roughness map, I was modeling the texture for my sword and armor pieces for my MetaHuman character, and I will make a video on that soon enough. But when I was texturing the roughness of those materials, I saw drastic differences between JPEG and PNG. PNG was maintaining the actual roughness that I desired, whereas JPEG was actually making the surface slightly less rough. And so I would suggest that even if you have to bake the map in less memory, go with PNG and then compress that PNG to approximately 15% or 20%. That will still give you better result than roughness map of the JPEG. So yeah, in case of roughness map, you should definitely go with PNG. Now in case of normal map, we know that normal maps usually have a very specific range of colors, and so it would make sense that you would have to bake that in PNG. But that's not actually true. In case of roughness map, for whatever reason, JPEG preserves enough detail, or in fact the same amount of detail in most cases, that is good enough for your model even up close. So with that said, I will have to say that JPEG and PNG are both useful, but in case of normal map, you should mostly go with JPEG because your overall texture size will be smaller. Now with that said, I will have to conclude this video. I wanted to make this short video because I was texturing my models very recently, and this is the very first time that I'm texturing the models from scratch, which means I'm making every single texture on my own, and I've seen some drastic differences between JPEG and PNG. So in conclusion, I will say that for roughness map, you should go with PNG most of the time. But in other cases and in other textures, you can actually go with JPEG and that would be fine. But do keep in mind that you should go with JPEG and not JPEG 2000. There are other image qualities as well and image formats as well. But in case of baking textures, PNG and JPEG still remain the superior ones in my opinion. But if you have any specific suggestions regarding baking texture maps in these two file formats, you can leave them down in the comments below. And I hope you have a good one.